Long ago, in the heart of a sun-baked village nestled between two great rivers, there lived a girl named Noma. From the moment she opened her eyes as a baby, the midwife gasped. Not because of her crying or the way she kicked, but because right in the center of her forehead, glowing softly under the lantern light, was a birthmark shaped like a perfect star. "Mark my words," the old midwife had whispered, trembling as she handed the child to her widowed father. "This one is destined for greatness, or great suffering." Noma grew up motherless. Her father, a humble fisherman, tried to raise her with all the love he had. But when the river took him one rainy season, she was left in the hands of his second wife, Mama Gimbia, a woman with a tongue sharp as a blade and a heart colder than river stone. Mama Gimbia had a daughter of her own, named Gimbia, who looked nothing like Noma. While Noma was tall, smooth-skinned, and radiant like morning sun, Gimbia was loud and carried herself with the pride of someone who believed the world owed her a crown. The villagers often whispered when Noma walked by, "A queen born into the wrong home." But Mama Gimbia hated every whisper, every stolen glance, every compliment Noma received. In her heart, she had sworn an oath. Gimbia would marry wealth, and Noma would be forgotten. So she made Noma the servant of the house. At sunrise, Noma swept the compound, fetched water from the distant stream, and cooked for everyone, often going to bed on an empty stomach. Yet through it all, Noma never complained. She smiled with her eyes, sang softly as she worked, and greeted elders with deep respect. One hot market day, as she balanced a calabash of water on her head, Noma passed the roadside where the village's strangest man sat. His name was Ichoku. He was a crippled beggar. His legs twisted like tree roots, his hands calloused, and his clothes were layers of brown and gray rags. He sat on a low wooden board with wheels, dragging himself along the dusty road with wooden crutches tied under his arms. People often crossed to the other side of the road when they saw him. Some said he was cursed. Others said he was mad. But Noma looked at him kindly. "Would you like some water?" she asked, kneeling beside him. Ichoku looked up slowly, and for the first time in days he smiled. "I would," he said in a voice like the rustling of dry leaves. "But no one ever asks." Noma handed him her calabash. He drank slowly, carefully, then whispered something she didn't quite hear, like a prayer lost in the wind. "May your tears one day water the soil of joy." Noma blinked. "What did you say?" Ichoku only smiled and handed her the calabash. She walked away, heart light, never knowing that those words would echo in her future. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the palm trees and the village drums beat in the distance, a royal announcement shattered the stillness of the town. "The prince of the Eastern Kingdom shall choose his bride. He shall come in secret, in disguise, and take for a wife the woman whose heart is clean and whose hands are kind." The village erupted with excitement. Girls began oiling their skin, weaving fresh hair, and practicing their bows. Mama Gimbia's eyes gleamed. But not for Noma. No, she had a plan. A wicked plan. And it began with Ichoku, the crippled beggar by the road. Every morning, the village came alive with chatter. From the echoing clang of mortars pounding yam to the gossip of women braiding each other's hair under mango trees, news moved fast, faster even than the eastern wind. And now, the only news that mattered was, the prince was coming. Not just any prince. Prince Ichoku, son of the great King Ajime of the Eastern Kingdom. A man whispered about in markets and moonlight stories. They said he was as rich as the sea was wide, as handsome as the first son of creation, and yet he had never taken a wife. But now he would, and not by wealth, not by lineage, but by the purity of a woman's heart. Every maiden was aflame with hope. Mothers with ugly daughters sought herbalists. Girls rubbed their skin raw with camwood, and tailors worked through the night, sewing gowns bright enough to blind the gods. Mama Gimbia was no exception. She bathed Gimbia in goat milk and smeared her with turmeric. She paid a traveling griot to compose a praise song just for her daughter. She even forced her to eat only snails for 5 days because someone swore it softened a woman's voice. But one thing kept her awake at night. Noma. Noma, with her star-shaped birthmark. Noma, with her glowing skin and quiet smile. Noma, whom even the market goats followed as if bewitched. Mama Gambia knew that if the prince ever laid eyes on that girl, Gambia didn't stand a chance. She had to act, and fast. The next morning, she sent for the village drunkard who often acted as her errand boy. "Go," she said, slipping him 2 cowries, "and tell the crippled beggar by the roadside that I have a wife for him. My stepdaughter. He need not pay anything, just agree to take her before the week ends." The drunkard blinked. "You want the beggar to marry Noma? Is your ear full of yam?" she hissed. "Yes." "Let him carry her to his shack and leave this village with her. I don't care where they go." He looked confused, but he obeyed. That afternoon, Ichoka sat at his usual spot by the dusty market road, tracing lines in the sand with his finger. He watched people walk by, without seeing him. That was his gift, his disguise. But when the drunkard came panting, whispering the stepmother's offer, Ichoka's lips curled ever so slightly. "She wants me to marry the girl with the star face?" he asked, voice low. "Yes, beggar. You. A beauty like that will never be yours again. Take her and go. It's her punishment." Ichoka lowered his eyes and nodded. "Tell her I accept." The deal was made. That night, Noma was called into the house. Her heart sank when she saw the gleam in Mama Gambia's eyes. "You are getting married," the woman said. Noma blinked. "Am married?" "Yes." "Tomorrow morning. Pack your rags." "But to who?" Mama Gambia smirked. "You'll see him. Just know that you'll never step foot near this house or that palace again. Your fate is sealed." Noma's legs trembled. She fell to her knees, begging, weeping, pleading with the gods to wake her from a nightmare. But the more she cried, the more Mama Gambia laughed. And when dawn broke, the villagers gathered, curious, whispering. They had never seen such a strange wedding. No music, no drumming, no feasting. Just a crying girl in old wrappers, being led by the arm to the roadside where the crippled beggar waited with his crutches and wooden board. Ichoka looked up at her, expression unreadable. Noma couldn't even look him in the eye. As the elder pronounced them husband and wife, she wept openly. The village children stopped laughing. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. When it was done, Ichoka reached out his hand gently. "Let's go," he said. And Noma, wiping her face with the back of her hand, followed the man everyone thought was broken, away from the village, away from her dreams, and into the unknown. No one knew that she had just stepped into a story that would shake the kingdom. The road from the village to the edge of the forest was long and cruel. Dust clung to Noma's bare feet like shame. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her chest hollow with fear. The villagers' whispers still echoed in her ears. "Isn't it the girl with the star mark? They gave her to a beggar? Ah, what a waste of beauty." Ichoku said nothing. He dragged himself beside her in silence, using his wooden crutches. Occasionally, he glanced at her, not with pity or mockery, but with something quieter, something almost respectful. They reached the outskirts of the village just as the sun began to drop behind the hills. There, nestled between 2 crooked trees and a patch of stubborn grass, stood a shack, barely a house. It was made of cracked mud, patched with torn mats and broken bamboo. The roof sagged like an old man's back, and a lazy chicken clucked in the corner, as if mocking the new bride. Noma stood at the doorway, her heart twisting. This wasn't a home. It was a curse. "This is it," Ichoka said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "It isn't much, but the roof doesn't leak." She didn't respond. She stepped inside and looked around. A mat lay in the corner. A small clay pot sat over cold ashes. No windows. No door. Just holes in the wall where the wind wandered freely. This was where her stepmother had sent her to die, slowly, not with poison or blade, but with despair. "I'll sleep outside tonight," Ichoku added, lowering himself onto the wooden board. "You can have the mat. You've had a hard day." She turned to him, confused. But aren't we married? Ichoka looked at her with tired eyes. Marriage is more than a ceremony, Noma. You didn't choose this. I won't force it upon you. That night, Noma curled up on the thin mat and cried silently. Her tears fell onto the cold floor, soaking into the dust like seeds. Outside, the crickets sang their indifferent lullaby, and Ichoku, crippled beggar, unknown prince, sat beneath the moonlight, watching the stars with the quiet patience of someone who had waited a very long time. Days turned to weeks. Each day, Noma rose before dawn and swept the shack. She fetched water from a stream that snaked through the forest and cooked simple meals with whatever she could find: yam skins, wild herbs, sometimes a dry fish from the market. She didn't smile, but she didn't cry anymore. Her spirit was bruised, but not broken. Ichoka never asked anything of her. He cooked when she couldn't. He repaired the broken door with his own hands. He even carved little wooden animals and left them by her side of the mat, though he never admitted they were from him. One day, a little boy from the village came running into the shack, holding his bleeding knee. Noma rushed to him, tore a piece of her wrapper, and tied it around the wound. You should be more careful, she whispered gently. The boy nodded. Before he ran off, he turned to Ichoku and said, You're lucky, beggar. She's better than a queen. Ichoku didn't reply. He only watched Noma as she returned to her chores, her hands moving with grace. There was pain in her eyes, yes, but also something else. Something steady, something royal. But the world never forgets. Back in the village, preparations for the prince's visit reached fever pitch. Drums echoed day and night. Gimbia now wore imported beads and walked like her feet didn't touch the ground. Mama Gimbia boasted to anyone who would listen that her daughter would be queen soon. They laughed at Noma, sure she was gone, forgotten, buried under shame. But in a quiet corner of the king's palace, a man stood before a golden mirror, removing his rags, his crutches cast aside, his back straightened, his limp vanished, and his true form emerged, tall, noble, radiant. Prince Ichoku. He turned to his servant and said, She is ready. The sun rose that morning like a golden drumbeat, loud, blazing, and impossible to ignore. In the village square, the air was thick with excitement. Children ran barefoot, elders sharpened their greetings, and the market women wore wrappers so bright they could blind an eagle. This was the day the kingdom had been waiting for. The prince would choose his bride, but no one knew what he looked like. He walks among us, the royal messenger had warned. He is disguised, watching, listening, judging the hearts of women. So now every man could be the prince, every stranger a possible king. Girls began treating even goat herders with sudden politeness. Beggars received fresh kola nuts. Even the old palm wine tapper was offered cooked snails. Mama Gimbia was already in the palace courtyard, clutching Gimbia's hand like a hawk guarding a chick. Gimbia was dressed in shimmering wrappers imported from the city, her eyes painted with antelope ash and her lips dyed with red camwood. She is the fairest, Mama Gimbia whispered to the queen mother. The purest. She comes from noble blood. The queen mother, who had heard 100 such lies that week, simply nodded without smiling. Gimbia stood among a line of 30 other hopeful young women, each hoping for a crown, each praying to be noticed. But none of them knew that the prince had already made his choice. Days ago. And she wasn't here. Back at the shack. Far away from the palace gates, at the edge of the forest, Noma washed a small calabash in the stream. Her hands moved slowly, her mind elsewhere. The day felt strange, too quiet. The birds sang differently. The air seemed to hum with something unsaid. Ichoku watched her from the doorway of the shack. Dressed still in rags, he looked like a beggar, but his eyes burned with something deeper. Today was the day. You seem distant, he said gently. She turned to him, wiping her hands on her wrapper. I don't know. Something feels heavy in the wind. He smiled. Maybe the wind is preparing to carry you somewhere new. She scoffed lightly, the closest thing to a laugh she had made in weeks. Like where? Back to my stepmother's house? Or into another shame? No, he said, rising slowly from his stool. To a place where you'll be seen as you truly are. Before she could respond, a great shadow fell over the clearing.
Hoofs. Dust.
Drums. A royal carriage, gold-trimmed and guarded by soldiers, rolled to a stop before the shack. Noma froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She dropped the calabash. The soldiers stepped down, horns in hand. One blew "Bwaa," and the sound shook even the trees. Then from the carriage emerged a man.
Tall.
Straight-backed. No crutches. No wooden board. His face familiar but different. Clean-shaven, glowing regal. His eyes found hers instantly. Noma, he said. I have come for you. She staggered back, breath caught in her throat. Ichoku. He nodded. My name is Prince Ichoku of the Eastern Kingdom, son of King Ajime, heir to the throne. I came to your village as a beggar, not because I needed help, but because I needed to see who would offer it freely, without promise, without reward. She dropped to her knees, trembling. I didn't know. I didn't. He moved to her and lifted her up. You saw me when no one else did. You shared your water. You gave me your kindness, not knowing it would change your future. You are the woman I have chosen. If you'll have me, come. Let the world see who you truly are. The soldiers bowed. The horns sounded again. And Noma, still in her simple wrapper, barefoot, stunned, was lifted into a royal carriage and driven straight through the heart of the village. Back in the village square, as the procession rolled into the palace courtyard, people screamed. Women fainted. Gimbia blinked, confused. Mama Gimbia dropped her hand fan. From the carriage stepped the prince, and beside him, Noma. Beautiful, glowing,
Calm.
A palace guard read the scroll. By order of the king, Prince Ichoku has chosen his bride. She is not of noble birth. She is not of decorated blood. She is a woman of pure heart and quiet strength. Her name is Noma, and from this day forth, she is princess of the Eastern Kingdom. Mama Gimbia fainted. Gimbia's knees buckled. The villagers bowed low, unable to raise their eyes. And Noma simply reached for Ichoku's hand and held it, strong and steady. The palace courtyard buzzed like a hive of stunned bees. The villagers had seen many wonders, festivals, royal dances, masquerades with masks that blinked and bled, but nothing prepared them for Noma's return. Not as a servant, not as a beggar's wife, but as a princess. She wore no crown yet, no royal beads, no gold, just her simple wrapper and the quiet dignity that had always lived in her spine. And beside her, Prince Ichoku stood tall, the perfect contrast to the crippled beggar no one had looked at twice. Mama Gimbia, now seated on the ground with her wrapper twisted from the fall, could not close her mouth. Her face drained of color, her voice stolen by shame. Gimbia, once loud and boastful, hid behind a pillar, unable to face the girl they had thrown away like ash from last night's fire. Noma's eyes swept across the crowd. She saw the shock, the envy, the regret, but she said nothing. Instead, she turned to Ichoku and whispered, I don't know how to live in a place like this. I'm not a princess. I'm just me. He took her hand gently. That's exactly why you were chosen. Later that night, in the royal bath chamber, Noma was bathed by handmaidens with sweet-scented oils and hibiscus milk. Her hair was braided into coils fit for a queen. She was dressed in silks from distant lands, golden yellows, deep reds, and shimmering whites. But even beneath the richness, her star-shaped birthmark still glowed faintly on her forehead, a sign that destiny had always been watching. In the grand hall, the king and queen welcomed her, embracing her like the daughter they never had. The drums beat loud and strong. Food flowed like rivers, wine like honey. Praise singers sang her name. She rose from dust, crowned by grace. The girl with the star-marked face. Ichoku watched her from across the hall, pride shining in his eyes. She had walked through fire, and now she was gold. Back in the village, Mama Gimbia sat in her compound, alone. Word had spread like wildfire. Noma is now princess. Noma, the girl she had tried to erase. Gimbia wept bitter tears. Not just of envy, but of deep humiliation. No one came to visit them. No suitors knocked on the door. Children no longer greeted them with respect. Their shame was complete. One evening, a royal messenger arrived with a basket. Inside was a fine wrapper, a bag of rice, and a letter written in beautiful handwriting. I forgive you, Mama Gambia. I will not repay wickedness with wickedness. You may not love me, but I release you from my heart. May the gods heal yours too. Noma. Mama Gambia stared at the letter for a long time. Then she dropped it and wept. Weeks passed. Then moons. Noma adjusted to palace life with quiet grace. She learned the languages of nobles, the politics of the court, the rhythms of royal responsibility. But she never lost herself. She still rose early, still helped servants cook when no one watched, still smiled at the stable boys. The kingdom came to love her. They called her the people's princess. And beside her, Prince Ichoku reigned not just as a ruler, but as a man who had once known the weight of rejection, the sting of pity. His heart had found its match not in beauty or titles, but in humility. One evening, as they stood on the palace balcony overlooking the city, Noma turned to him. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "Miss what?" he replied. "The shack, the ashes, the quiet." He smiled. "Sometimes. But then I look at you, and I know we brought the quiet with us." They kissed under the stars, beneath a sky that once watched a beggar and a girl with a star-shaped mark walk silently down a dusty road. Now they walked into forever.